Hi everyone, welcome to the very last episode of Character Strengths 24 in 24. Yes, three character strengths left to go, but I am saying it's the very last episode, and that's purely because all right, several reasons. As you know from previous episodes, it is quite hard to find people to talk about the lower strengths, for me anyway, my lower strengths, where they've got it quite strong in theirs. Purely because running out of people that I know, running out of people in this industry, running out of people that might have something to contribute, for example, or who have done the character strength survey. But as you know, if you've been following my journey, that I'm a strong believer in alignment, and there's always certain things that just happen to align along the way and put things into place. One of those things is that I was working with a client who also uses the character strength survey, and it turned out that we have the exact same 24 character strengths, the last three, sorry, being the exact same, and that is zest, self-regulation, and perseverance. Excuse me. And we kind of agreed to have a session of yapping, as you all love, in this episode, where we talk about those three character strengths, but also themes about vision boarding, themes about our work together, because this is a client. So you get to see an insight into what a client therapist situation or relationship looks like in particular. And the reason why is because she said a few things that really resonated and that really taught me a lot about being in the wellness and health and well-being industry, as a coach, as a therapist. Um, and it made me realize actually how, while it might seem quite common that therapy or coaching is happening a lot more in the world, it's still very much niched to a certain population, a very white middle class Western population, and actually and a feminized one. And in order to make it accessible to the people that need it the most, perhaps they need to see what a coaching relationship looks like and what the key ingredients are for that. So, in this very unstructured episode, as always, and I'm sure it's going to be a long one because it's the last one, we're going to be wrapping up. We may even be doing the character strength survey again because, like I say, I try to do it every few months. So the last time I did it was January, and now it's a whole year on. The whole podcast series comes to a conclusion. So it will be nice to see how the character strengths have changed in that time as well. All right, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jaeh. Amazing. We're joined with Jaeh today, who can do her own introduction because I suck at those and I never give him enough justice. Hi, Jaeh. Thanks for being here. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, no worries at all. Thank you for inviting me to be here. I don't know what to say now. Well, obviously, I'm sure, well, panicking.
Yeah.
No, we met through a coaching service that I had through my employer, but then because I really loved our sessions, this is not me advertising you, but why not a
Shameless
little
plug.
bit? Shameless plug for you. I really enjoyed our
Put
session.
an affiliate code in the caption and become a real influencer for
My
10% of
discount
muted
code is
healing.
below. But yeah, so obviously carried on the relationship there with coaching and therapy and those kinds of things, which I found really valuable. So about me, I'm 29, live in London with my husband, work in sort of like the corporate security field. Um, that's pretty much it. That's
Awesome.
I have a cat.
Cat called Jack, who might make a special appearance.
Yeah, he's currently sleeping behind me, and we might encroach on lunchtime, so he may pop up.
You know, he often does. He likes to say hello, so every now and then. Wonderful. So, as we know, this whole episode and this whole series have been about character strengths surveys. Tell us about your history with character strengths. I can't remember if you discovered it with me or you had done it before that anyway. And what's your profile? How have you ever used it?
That's a great question. So I did discover it with you. I think you had suggested it as a tool when we first started the coaching relationship kind of thing. I think the first time I did it was, well, I've got one report and it's got the date of April on it. So I'm going to say I did it in April purely based on the date at the top. So yeah, I have used it a few times, I think, like through my professional career in it's sort of, I know you always say the ones at the bottom aren't weaknesses, they're just strengths we use less, but I have focused on the top sort of 5 to 10, and I use it with my team. So we're a very small team, all from very different backgrounds, and so I sort of use it to say, this is how I operate, this is what I'm good at, these are the strengths that come out often for me, so if you're seeing these things in me that and you're thinking what's going on here, and this is one of my natural strengths, this is what I can bring to the team, this is how it can be useful, those kinds of things. And also I think looking at the ones at the bottom, so we have the same last three, but I think in a different order. So
Mm,
perseverance, self-regulation, and zest. That's the order they go in for me, which made perfect sense. I saw that and I was like, yep, that completely tracks. And then to be honest, I've never really explored the bottom set. So
mm,
I'm quite actually looking forward to this conversation. Because why are they at the bottom? What's going on down there?
same. I think this the frustrating thing about yeah, the frustrating thing about the character strengths at the bottom and the middle ones as well is that they really start causing questions. The top signature ones, people are mostly a bit like, yeah, that makes sense, I see it. But the ones down near the bottom and the middle, people start getting questionable. People start getting dubious about those because they think, well, no, I thought this would be higher or I thought this would be lower, so I'm a bit confused. But then when you usually, I had a client who paid for the paid version, and then you get to see the
Yeah,
spectrum of how much they rank. And a lot of the time, they're actually so close, or if not identical in terms of their ranking, that they end up just having to go somewhere because it's a ranking process. It doesn't necessarily mean that one outweighs the other.
of
So it
course.
may very well be that Zest, Perseverance, and Self-Regulation are completely all on the same playing field. But I think the important part is not to get bogged down with the ranking as such, but asking the questions as to why do we think they are not as strong as some of the others, and how can we cultivate them? Because in cultivating your lesser use strengths, we end up increasing things like productivity, well-being, meaning in life, especially as part of a community. If you are looking to increase your happiness, you don't just exercise these strengths for yourself, but also for other people. Now, with that little prefacing said, what does Zest, self-regulation, perseverance, in any order that you want to go through, what do they mean for you? And why are you not surprised that they're at the bottom?
Okay, so this is a great question. I've been thinking about this in preparation for this conversation. I think perseverance and zest for me are kind of, I know they're separate. We're not doing 23 strengths, doing 24. But for me, perseverance and zest fit in the same category. And I can see that their subcategories are both courage. Also, if I'm looking down, I'm not texting. I've just got it in front of me.
We can tell, we
So,
can tell. Don't
yeah,
worry.
I was like, just in case you're like, who is she texting?
You're
No,
not at school, Jaeh. It's all right.
please don't put me in detention. No, I'm just reading the definition of them, and I can see that they're both perseverance and zest are both in the category of courage, which immediately makes me feel like the cowardly lion over here. No, I'm not brave, but at the same time honesty and bravery are higher up, and those are also in the courage category. So part of that, like, that's something that I think about when I contemplate the fact that these two are at the lower end of my list. And I guess for me, I suppose zest being part of the courage category is a question. Like, is it? But at the same time, perseverance and zest, I think that those two are probably lower down for me because part of the coaching that I originally had with you was because I was diagnosed with ADHD a year and a half ago. And being female, late diagnosis, I know that's quite classic. And I wonder if that fits into part of my ADHD brain where perseverance, the minute something gets a bit boring or less shiny, my brain's out. It's done. It's like, I don't
Time
want to deal
out,
with this
time
anymore.
out.
Yeah. The fun part's over. No, thank you. So part of me wondered if that's why perseverance and zest are further down for me because of science.
So because of the brain.
Science, yeah, that's it.
We don't make those rules. That's so interesting because I had forgotten that they were part of the courage category. And fun fact, I made that my word of the year. I'm looking either side because on one side I have the strength and on the other side I have my vision board. And I did my 2024 vision board very much based around the character strength survey, and in particular the four virtues, the four strengths within the category of virtue, within the category of courage. What am I saying today?
Courage. So
Um,
zest, perseverance, honesty, bravery.
Yeah, which is really interesting because now I'm desperate to be like, okay, let's redo this test and see if I have managed to, because I believe the challenge I set myself was, okay, well, clearly these are the strengths that you don't use as much. This year, you're gonna ramp it up. You're gonna ramp up your courage, your honesty, your bravery, and so on. So maybe the intention is if I was to redo the strength survey
Mm.
today, they would be higher. Want to find out? Maybe we'll do that at the end of the session.
Yeah.
Zest is, let's have a look at what these categories are according to the VIA survey. Now, with Zest, it says that I feel vital and full of energy. I approach life feeling activated and enthusiastic. Now, I know that given the time of year, both of us experience a fair bit of seasonal affective disorder. Both of us, struggle with autoimmune conditions as well. So Zest is a real challenge because of the science, because again, we don't make the rules. It means approaching a situation or life in general with excitement and energy, not approaching tasks or activities halfway or half-heartedly. People who are high in zest are excited to get up in the morning and they live their lives like it's an adventure. This strength has the strongest ties to overall life satisfaction and a life of engagement.
Mine's at the bottom.
We also have to remember, I did mine in January, which is, I would
Mm.
say, was a time when I was feeling quite zesty. I mean, that means something very different now
Yeah,
on
that's got
social
a different
media.
connotation.
But you did yours in April when we first started, and that wasn't such a good time for your health. So could that have been an
No.
impact?
Well, yeah, I was going to say actually, as you were reading that definition, the first thing that came into my head was I am a chronic health girly. So that is something that I do struggle with and have done for quite a few years. One of the illnesses I have being, what's it? They like rebranded ME into chronic fatigue or something. So whatever the new name of ME is, I have that. And a lot of that is literally being fatigued. So I wonder if part of my brain or my body is saying, you can't have too much zest. You can't have zest about too much stuff because you need to conserve your energy. And so I wonder if part of my energy is used in actually completing the task or participating in the task rather than using extra energy to show excitement or just happy to be here kind of energy. Like I think it turns
Mm.
into that masking situation where I'm like, if I need to do this thing, I can only do it. I can't do it and be enthusiastic about it.
It begs the question about these character strengths surveys and such as to, if they are that universal, do they take into consideration things like chronic health conditions which may affect this and keep a person perpetually with zest at the very lowest? Because they're meant to be dynamic, they're meant to change around.
Of course.
For you, if we were to, let's say, raise zest, what do you think would need to happen to make you more zesty?
A bit more zesty. Well, to be fair, actually, I think to bring zest up, I would probably, I don't know, as I said, just need to be more excited about things, but that's not the point. That's what zest is. I think it would be a case of maybe picking and choosing better or like prioritizing better the things in my life, on my to-do list, in my calendar, whatever it may be, so that I don't overburden myself, which again I think is another ADHD thing, where I'm like, yes, I'll accept every single task forever, even though I don't have capacity for this, either mentally or physically. I think perhaps prioritizing and picking a bit better so that I don't overburden myself so that I can experience things more fully. I can just have one or two things on my plate. And, my body says, yep, we've got enough charge today to do these two things, but nothing more. Perhaps that would allow me to better experience things in life. Because I think that's what the end of the definition was, wasn't it? Like your general like zeal for life or whatever it was. Um,
Mm.
I think maybe I would enjoy things more if I was a bit more selective about what I said yes to.
Which kind of relates to the self-regulation one, because that one is a little bit, how do we define self-regulation without using the word regulation as such? But I suppose there is a principle within that of you choosing and selecting and being very mindful about those decisions that you move with. The definition of that literally says, I manage my feelings and actions, and I'm disciplined and self-controlled. It's a complex character strength, apparently. Belongs to the category of temperance, though. So this one's less so courage, more to do with temperaments, which is balance. Um, Those high in self-regulation have a good level of confidence in their belief that they can be effective in what they pursue and are likely to achieve their goals. They're admired for their ability to control their reactions to disappointment and insecurities. It helps keep a sense of balance, order, progress in life. Self-regulation can be viewed as a resource that can be depleted and fatigued. I wonder if this was something we were experiencing at the time we did the survey. A useful metaphor is that self-regulation acts like a muscle, which can be exhausted or strengthened through regular practice. I already go to the gym. Do I need to?
That's the discipline. But no, I think that's an interesting point. I think that was a really nice segue, by the way. Straight into it. You're like, oh, this kind of fits, and it
It's
makes
almost
perfect sense.
almost like I know what I'm doing in a coach. What?
It's almost like you came prepared. No, I think a lot of things stand out in that definition for me, in that it makes me think of my former colleagues and friends now. Always used to say to me that either I felt nothing or I felt everything. They were like, "There's no middle ground for you. It's 0 or 100." And so that, I think you were talking there in the definition about regulating your emotions and things like that. I think it's quite telling that perhaps this is number 23 for me. And, it's a common theme in my life where people say to me, you are either 0 or 100. There's no in between. So I'm wondering, like, what do you think? Like, tell me, how can you build in self-regulation? How can you build these habits?
Hmm. I mean, it also reminds me when you're saying about the all or nothing approach. Excuse me. When you're saying about the all or nothing approach, I get a lot of that with clients who have endured or are working through trauma, because that kind of cognitive belief system that switches on all or nothing is very much related to fight or flight. It's either this or that. There's no creation of balance, and you don't need to worry about the bits in between because they were never taught how to do that. And we know that this is a theme that's often come up in our sessions as well.
Yeah.
That again, it can, and I suppose I share this so that listeners who also relate to this all or nothing or also relate to self-regulation being lower down need to recognize that if you are an adult who struggles to self-regulate, that can sound quite humiliating. That can sound quite like, wow, why are you at your big age, really? But it's so common. How many people do we know is in terms of our adult lives, whether it's managers or parents that lash out, for example, or that, can be quite moody, for example, ourselves included. And these are ways of showing that in our day-to-day life, we really haven't learned how to self-regulate.
Self-regulate.
And the way in which you do that, to respond to your question, I hear a lot of stuff about breath work. I hear a lot of stuff about returning to the body. I hear a lot of stuff about journaling. Of those, I have used many, and in fact, all of them, I think. But I've never really drawn the connection as to whether or not that helps me self-regulate and in what situations it helps me to self-regulate.
That's a good question. I think for me, two things with breath work and journaling and things, going back to the ADHD, I really struggle. Even if it's for like 2 minutes, you're going to do 2 minutes of breath work. My mind's thinking about the next 14 things we're going to do in the next 10 minutes. So
Mm,
I think I've always struggled with that. But then I think also perhaps this is more like hypothetical now. This isn't me telling you how I'm going to heal myself. Maybe it is. Um, I uh, I tend to immediately forgotten what I was going to say because I'm looking at the definition and the notification came in and my mind's gone. See, this is why I can't do breath work. If I'm more aware of the emotions that I'm feeling, is there a way of sort of like an early warning system? Can I build in an early warning system into my mind and body? Because as we know, the body keeps the score. Can I build it in so that I
I
can?
wish it didn't.
Yeah, can it stop now? I think we're done. I think we
You can
know.
you, you can put your pen and paper down now, Mr. Body. That's
Yeah,
great.
we're done. Can I build into my habits or sort of through journaling or breath work or any other mindfulness technique? Is there a way I can develop? This makes it sound like it's technology here. An early warning system so that I can quickly or proactively understand when I'm feeling a thing that's about to overwhelm me. Is there something? Can I create a delay essentially? Because I work in security, and so a lot of things are about you can protect something, but essentially you have to understand that you don't actually stop crime from happening. For example, you can delay it, you can detect it, you can deter it. Can we build in a delay between starting to feel emotion, having massive breakdown? Is there a middle ground? Is there something there?
Do you know what? Now that when you've explained it like that, I believe there is, and I believe there is because tried and tested. Um, I'll give an example ish without giving away too much detail, but recently I had to have some difficult conversations. And I knew they were difficult because I was running away from having them, which has not really happened in a very long time. So either I've not been in those situations or these situations just haven't been difficult enough. So this particular scenario required me to have an honest and vulnerable conversation. And I also predicted my come down. I literally said to the other person, by the way, once I've said this, I'm probably going to shut down massively. The next couple of days, you'll barely hear from me. I'm going to be really, really reclusive. And I need you to know that that's not you. It's my body reacting to the fact that, wow, you just literally, maybe not literally, metaphorically stripped yourself bare. And now you have to deal with that. Have fun. So I just know that's going to happen. And lo and behold, less than 24 hours later, that exact same thing happened. And I don't know whether that, now I'm saying it back, I'm like, well, did you maybe usher that on yourself though, as a little self-fulfilling prophecy? Would it even have happened? But I do believe that you can, that even if I did though, let's put that spin on it. Even if I did usher that on myself by saying that that's what's going to happen, I've shown the evidence of mind over matter that you can prepare your body, you can prepare what's going to happen through the stories that you tell yourself and tell others. And one of the reasons I'm supposed to extend that, one of my little winter arc, let me show you right now. Definitely links into self-regulation and my vision board for this year. But one of my friends, when I left my career in teaching, got me this journal called I So Totally Got This. And I'm not a fan of these kind of writing journals where I'm just not really a huge fan, to be honest. But I read the
Yeah.
introduction and I really liked it because it speaks about positive psychology. It speaks about the stories that you tell yourself.
Mm.
And I also don't like waste. So this was not about it. It's a nice book. Like she spent £14 for Waterstones on me. It's not going to sit on my shelf. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, you got to use that.
And you know what? Every day for the last 3 weeks, I have been using it. It's just one page where I journal, and literally the prompt is why I so totally got this today. And I would put in a different like item or thing that I apparently need to have in that particular day. After this weekend, it's going to get deeper and it's going to get a bit more vulnerable. But I think it's a part of that is that practice that I've been doing for the last 3 weeks. Every day's been, yeah, you've got this. You can complete your to-do list. Yeah, you've got this. You can get to the gym. But I think from today, it's going to be a little bit more deeper in the sense of, yes, you've got this. You can do that inner work that you've been struggling or avoiding. You can tell yourself
Yeah.
this story instead of that story. And the purpose behind my intentionality behind doing that is, all right, look, it's all very well that I preach it in my therapy sessions to clients, but I need to practice it as well. Let's see if this does actually benefit my self-efficacy and whether or not I believe I can do it.
I think that's really interesting. And I have seen pictures that you put of this journal on Instagram, and I love the little quotes that are in there. So thank you for providing me with this content. I
Everyone
actively look
follow
forward
muted healing is what
to
Jaeh's saying, really.
Muted healing. The content's great. You can really get involved. No, and I think also now that I know that that's what you're doing, when I see those pictures, it will remind me that you're doing what you're meant to. I think it's a highlight, perhaps even in a method of accountability of has Afsar done his journal today? Have I seen the quote? Have I
Not
seen it?
not the client holding the therapist to account. What?
100%. It's happening now. Now that I know that you've done this, this is your own fault. But I think also, building those habits, and part of self-regulation is, of course, discipline. You can't regulate yourself in any way, whatever capacity it might be in, unless you have that discipline. And I think discipline and motivation go hand in hand, which is why I think perseverance and zest. I think that's why we've got that same grouping right at the bottom. But I think as well, the more you do these things, as you said, it's been, oh, I can do my to-do list today. And now we're at a point where you're saying it's going to be a bit deeper, it's going to go a bit further. It reminds me sort of when we first started our coaching, probably because the first few sessions were through like a professional medium, through like my company. And so I was like, I don't know
I'd,
what he's
I'd,
going to
I'd just like
say.
to clarify. Even my medium is professional. What Jaeh
Yeah,
means is
yeah.
an outsourced company.
Yeah, yeah, sorry. Avatar is very professional, 5-star Google review. But what I mean is that we originally met through my company organizing
Yeah.
coaching through the workplace adjustment service because of my, you know, being neurodivergent. They were like, "This can help you. Off you go." But then those first few sessions. I'd never really had coaching, and I wasn't really sure not why I was there. I knew why I was there, but like how it could help me or, you know, what the vibe was. So those first few sessions, I probably held back a fair amount. But then I think about, since still very professional, since going to a non company organized coaching method with you, I think that now I'm so much more honest purely because it's that consistency. We've been talking, you know, we've been talking for a fair amount of time now. It is that level of, it's not going to say comfort because it's never comfortable, is it? You're never really comfortable with when you're just
Like we
telling
sit through
everything.
the discomfort. Look at
We
that
do,
therapy talk.
we do. We let the feelings pass over us, but we don't let them dwell. All of that. But yeah, I feel like it's a similar thing with your journal. So, you know, it started as like just surface level, just like, oh yeah, I can do this, to now you're sat there and you're like, actually, I think that I can go deeper. I can say more. I can think more. I was going to say more complexly, but I don't think that's a word.
No, but it makes sense. It really
Yeah.
makes sense. This is going to align with something I'll share in a bit, but carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that possibly is a positive example of perseverance for me. So even though it is at the bottom of the list, again, not a weakness, just a lesser used strength, but perhaps I can use that as a positive example of, I persevered with our sessions, not just because they were something to persevere through, but you
Mm,
know, it's become something better for me. I've worked through that initial like, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? What is the purpose? This is boring, or whatever it may be. They were never boring. I really value our sessions. But whatever that thought might be, we've worked through it to a point now where I'm like, oh no, I like this. I enjoy this. I find this useful. Yes, it can be uncomfortable at times, but again, that's within my control and my limit of what I'm willing to delve into. So
mm,
maybe I can see, because I've only just put this together, which is why this is a very loosely formed thought. Maybe I can use this positive example of how perseverance, particularly in like self care and self awareness, has paid off, and how it is paying off still. Maybe this is an example I can use across other areas of my life when I'm sat there like, oh, why am I doing this, brother? Maybe it can be a maybe it can be a positive reminder.
I love that. And this is taking me into a few directions. Nice segue into perseverance, by the way. Look at that. See how easy it is. And you're absolutely right in that. I don't know if it's a neurospicy thing that the three of these are grouped together, but essentially perseverance. You know what? I'm just going to segue straight into the definition on the VIA website, which is that it is as basic as sticking with things. It means being hardworking, finishing what is started, despite barriers and obstacles that arise. The pleasure received from completing tasks and projects is very important to those who are high in perseverance. I feel like maybe some of the questions when we were completing them in the survey, maybe we were thinking about work-related things in which we really have to work hard to persevere. I know certainly maybe I was thinking about business, like muted healing, for example, back in
Yes.
January as well. And it's at a different place in January to what it is in now. So, but I also love what you've just shared, which is you don't realize that you're persevering when you're in the zone, actually just doing it. When you text to say, hey, can I book my next session? That's a perseverance because you're coming back to that thing that you said you would, which is working on yourself. It doesn't feel like you're working on yourself, but that is what is happening throughout. Sometimes the person must dig deep and muster the will to overcome thoughts of giving up. I suppose that's where what we were just talking about in terms of leveling up. Coasting is quite a dangerous thing to do with perseverance or any kind of growth, I guess. And I want to pause here before I go back into that definition and just revisit something that you said about you with the first set of coaching that we did through the neurodivergency company, that was, yeah, okay, fair enough. You held back a fair bit. It was very much focused on neurospiciness and work. And then when you went in privately with me, that's when you unlocked another level. You also mentioned that you've never had coaching before, but you've had therapy before. I've recommended a therapist to you as well, and you had a couple of sessions with her. You've been around this journey for quite some time. Tell me a little bit about what that journey was like, why, and you really did persevere through it.
I did, and that was actually as you were reading that definition, and I knew that this is something possibly we were going to explore. It immediately went into my head like, this is the moment. This is the moment to talk about this. So yeah, I have been through the therapy journey or whatever it is quite a few times, but I've never really stuck with it. I've never persevered, so to speak, because I never really, I don't want to say like never really got on with the person I was talking to. It's not it. They were all lovely, but essentially, I think, oh, how many different counselors or therapists have I seen? I think it must have been four. Three of them were very sweet, stereotypical, lovely, middle-aged white ladies. One of them was a very sweet, stereotypical, middle-aged black lady. And so I don't want to like write her out of the story. She also, you know, representational. She was also lovely. But my point is that I was only really encountering one type of person that was trying to help me through whatever it was I'd gone to them with. And I just didn't persevere. Well, for a variety of reasons. One of them is I've got this massive issue where I feel let down by healthcare providers. And a few times, one of them didn't show up to a session or they cancelled, or you know, you hit your 8 or 12 sessions and they're like, okay, you're healed now, bye. And I was very much like,
Mm.
oh, but I'm not. I feel like we've opened too many doors and we haven't shut any. You've just made it worse. And so I think that was part of my problem. It was a problem. And so having those early experiences sort of put me off. But I
Mm.
also knew that I needed and wanted to talk about some experiences or past things in my life. And I have this massive fear of like overburdening people. So I can't talk to my friends about it because I'm like, oh no, they don't want to deal with this. This isn't for them. This isn't a them problem. But then when I went to talk to these women about these things, I felt like they didn't have like the context of me. I was like, you don't know me well enough. How are you gonna fix this? And then I realized the only way they were gonna know me is if I opened up more. But then I felt like I couldn't open up more because I had this feeling, again, they were lovely, very professional, but I had this feeling that I was being judged. And so I felt as though my journey wasn't, I couldn't continue on it because I just wasn't vibing with them. And it wasn't until, so, you know, you've said, "Ooh, I went private with you after my organization. They paid for a certain number of sessions, and then I was like, yeah, I'd love to carry on with this. And the only reason I actually carried on is because I was vibing with you. I was like, he's not judging me. I feel like I can be open and honest. Um, and I felt as though you were invested, and I felt therefore like I could invest in it, even though it was myself. I know it
Mm.
feels like I should be investing in myself, but I finally found myself in a situation where it was just right. And I know that people say, like, oh, you know, you really need to find a therapist that you vibe with. Like, it really makes a difference. And at first I was like, no, that's just lies. Until until I did actually start speaking to you. And again, shameless plug, you're great. So I think that that has sort of impacted my ability to persevere in my sort of self-care wellness um, journey. I hate the word journey, but it's always a journey, isn't
It
it?
is. Life is such a journey. Eat, pray, love. I want to know more a little bit about this thing, how you made the distinction between me and the others. What I'm hearing is, and I had a very similar experience as well. So, for full disclaimer, went through a whole journey of different therapists.
Mhm.
Probably, again, vast majority, about five or six, maybe four or 4 to 6. Let's go with that window. Um, some of them a longer period of sessions, some of them one hit wonders, and I was like not vibing. Some of them online, NHS, some of them private. One black lady, again, the rest of the middle class white women. And I guess yes, there was a lack of understanding of context. And when I hear you speaking, I it reminds me that things felt a little bit clinical
Yeah.
in that I hear what you're saying that you're a non-judgmental space, and I do the exact same because whenever we're doing the contracting, I have to talk about this is a non-judgmental space, blah 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 blah. But what is it that makes a client believe that?
Yeah.
You know what? Like
That's a
because
good
I'm
question.
sure I said the exact same thing as what all the others said as well. What was it that got you? I suppose won you over in the end. And I think this is really crucial because there are listeners out there who have tried therapy once and given up on it because they're like, nah, it's
Yeah.
not for me. And really, the idea is you wouldn't go. buying a plasma screen TV, the first one that you see, you would shop around.
Yeah.
You would shop around for the best kind of milk, even if it's your grocery shop. What's the specific one that you like? So why not do the same thing for the person who may help your mental health, right? And I wonder, I'm looking for a gem here that might help people to.
A gem. Okay, well, this is now going to just sound like you paid me to say this, which you did
Oh,
not. Just to clarify, hashtag not sponsored. Um, I feel like the difference is that, as you said, it was very clinical with them. It was all, I can even remember the room that we'd sit in. It was bright green, it was horrible. One of the walls had wallpaper that made it look like you were in the forest, and there was just two chairs and a little coffee table that had a box of tissues on it. And it was like the most emotionless room. And it was just like, this is so far from reality. Like, this is sterile. It's horrible. And I think that put me off. Also, it was part of my workplace, some of them. The first like 2 to 3 ladies were from my work. So part of me was like, oh, I'm just sat in my office complaining about my problems, and it felt wrong. But I think the major difference is that, that whole not knowing that you weren't judging me because you were also very open and honest with me. And sometimes I'd say things and you'd be like, yeah, same. No, okay. I'm a normal person. This is what normal people experience. And like those ladies, I felt like they were not better than me, but I felt judged by them because I was like, well, they've got their life together. They're all in lovely workwear with a faint floral print and full jewelry sets, and they're together. And like, I couldn't get out of bed this morning. Like, I'm not, we're on a different level, me and these ladies. And then when I started talking to you, and I'd be like, oh, especially with the being neurodivergent, I'd be like, oh, sometimes it's just chaos. And you'd be like, oh no, I fully, I've been there. And that helped me. I felt you were relatable, or like, I didn't feel as though there was a separation between these ladies and me, in that, they're like, oh, poor girl, she's a mess and that's her problem. I've never experienced these things. Whereas when I was talking to you, you were like, oh no, I can appreciate this feeling because I've also been through something similar. And
hmm.
it was nice to just feel that, not representation, that's not quite what I mean by it, but you know what I mean. I was like,
Felt
oh,
seen.
I did feel seen and not judged, because you'd said, I've experienced something similar, or, because of this, that, and the other, I understand where you're coming from. And also something that I think is not going to apply to everyone, but was super helpful for me in a way that I didn't realize, is that I come from a Indian Punjabi family, and you weren't a white middle class lady, and so sometimes I wouldn't have to explain.
Just had to
No,
check. No.
just hang on. No, so I didn't have to explain like cultural things, or if I was talking about my family specifically, I didn't have to be like, oh, and my grandparents lived with us, but that's normal, or whatever it may be. You kind of just already knew. You were like, no, no, I get you. I know what's happening. And when got married last year, and there's a lot of family related pressures and things like that. It was my choice. I'm very happy. I love him. Just to clarify, this is not cry for help. There's a lot of things there that came into it, and I felt as though I wasn't having to justify myself or explain myself and saying this is how things are. This is actually the normal part. That's not the bit I'm questioning. That bit, that's a cultural thing. The thing I'm questioning is this, that, and the other. I just felt a sense of ease at not having to bridge that cultural gap, because I could just say something to you and be like, yeah, no. And that made it so much easier.
Mm. Okay. So, yeah, what I'm hearing is that less of a gap between yourself and the therapist. And I know that some coaches or therapists will be hearing this and their head's going to be reeling like, what? You bring yourself into the session when you say, yeah, me too. And you know what? For the longest time, I used to beat myself with a stick about this, especially after being newly trained, in that you absolutely cannot put in a single ounce of your personal into a session. That session is led by the client, led by the client only. But I found over the time and over, I mean, I'm nearly on, I think, 500 coaching hours. And with that experience tells me that actually every client needs something different. Some of my clients, again, from the company that I met you through, are very much wham bam, thank you, man. Can you just give me the information I know so I can get back to the job I need to do? And that doesn't work well with me because I'm like, yeah, but then I'd just teach you, wouldn't I? And I'd just stay in the classroom, and I don't really want to do that. But I
Yeah.
guess what do you need? You tell me, and then I kind of have to coach them into seeing the other side of it, which is maybe it's better when you lead. Other clients, on the other hand, they lead the whole session. I barely say anything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
And they love that. I feel like a proper imposter in the sense of what I'm taking money from you for just saying, making a few
Yeah.
notes and feeding back to you.
Mhm.
But the power of those skills are, well, exactly that. They're just so powerful that that person needs a listening ear more than anything at that time. And then you have clients like, for example, our sessions, which is a little bit more conversational. It's very natural and requires sometimes you need a bit of accountability where I've said, have you considered this, Jaeh? And you're like, I didn't because I did not like that thought, but thank you. And there are other times where it's like, yeah, I get you, sis, totally. Like we're one and the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I think that that's where my problems lay in where I've had professionals that they did follow that what you said when you were newly trained and things like that when they're like no part of you must come into this session where I'm like no, then I may as well just talk to a wall at that point. I may as well talk to my pot plants. Like that's not going to work for me. You're not encouraging me to open up and be honest and think introspectively if you're not giving me anything back. I think that's how
Mm,
I operate. I appreciate some people do prefer that more transactional approach where they just need you to sit there, talk at you, feel great, off they go. Whereas it's just not me. I can't
mm.
work like that. But I think I appreciate obviously that is for some people, but that's where I fell down so many times before where I know this is a whole thing, especially in the corporate world, like bring your authentic self to work. You need to have some level of authenticity in the way you represent yourself in these kinds of sessions. Like there's nothing that will if you weren't honest and open with me as well, like obviously to a level. I'm not saying we both share all of our problems for a full hour and then we just go home and cry about it, but like to a level, um, if you're not really giving me that sort of safe space or that sharing your own way as well, then how am I supposed to know that I trust you? I'll just be like, oh,
Mm.
who's this guy again? Like he's just another one. He's just gonna listen to me complain about relationships and work and all of this stuff, and it's going to drain me emotionally, but also then you're just going to go and tell all your colleagues like, oh, she's such a whiner. Whereas at least I know that you can relate to what I'm saying, you are holding that space for me, you are sort of saying, okay, but I'm hearing you and I'm acknowledging what you've said and what you're feeling, but have you considered this? And often, as you've said, I have considered it, but I didn't want to, so I've immediately put it away again. I think it is, as you said as well, that level of accountability. You can say, okay, well, I know we said this, and you said you were going to do this. How have you got on with that? It's someone that is checking in and being an active part of the sessions as well, which is again where I think I fell down last time, is that it'd just be me talking to these ladies. Again, they were lovely, but I'd just talk to them and they'd be like, okay. And then the next time I'd go and there'd be no, so how do you feel after last time? Or last time you said you were going to do this. How did you get on with that? It's just sort of like, do your thing again, cry, then leave.
Mm.
So I think that's another difference that I've noticed and I've really appreciated.
I think I'm going to take a little midpoint review here and just talk about so far we've spoken about zest, self-regulation, and even perseverance. And the overarching theme that I'm getting from all of those things is about how we create the conditions in order to self-regulate or in order to persevere and in order to experience zest. And sometimes other people are helpful in creating that condition, and sometimes we're the ones that are responsible for it. Talking about that whole therapy journey and how we've managed to persevere through our mental health journey, whether it's with one person or with several people, it is a stark reminder of how, as cliche as it is, but healing is not a linear process. And perseverance doesn't need to be a linear process as well. If you're doing, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, if you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, but you're not getting the result that you want, isn't it time to change that thing that you're doing? It's time to change it up, mix it up, and so on. And I think this is a crucial lesson for me. So, full disclaimer, I've decided been thinking about it for about a month or so, but as of yesterday, I said to myself, I think it's time for you to start going back to therapy again. And more so because it just feels like, okay, I've kind of not mastered, I've aced this level. I've completed this level. It's time now to go up to the boss level, or go up to the next level, and unlock some new findings there. My therapist is probably still available. She is what we've just described. And at that moment in my life, it worked for me. The one that was very clinical, just heard everything back. But I think the things that she used to feed back to me in the form of metaphors or learnings about childhood trauma were really, really profound. And they sat with me for the longest time. So even though I wasn't able to relate with her, I still managed to walk away with some real gems. So I'm gonna try it out again and see if it works for my healing of the inner teen this time rather than the inner child. And if it doesn't, I'll pack that up and move on and try and find somewhere else because I know that the progress I've made with her, I've not made with the last five therapists. And I share that so that listeners remember that again, it's like shopping around a little bit. The downside to that is I've had clients who shop around but never really progress. And that reason why that is because they like having a new ear to listen to their problems each time because it's a new set of validation, a new set of reassurance. But that's not also conducive towards what you want to do unless there's an element of accountability in there, ideally, again, led by the client. And full disclaimer, I've had a client like that before where first set, fine, a little bit held back, didn't really want to open up too much, continued, persevered onto a second block of coaching. This time opened up. There was accountability, there was me giving, there was her giving, etc., etc. But maybe that got a little bit much for her because the third set she asked for a different coach therapist completely. But I had seen the signs of that happening or getting around to that because
Mm.
I felt like I think maybe this person just needs comfort and needs validation rather than accountability. I just I just hope that
Yeah.
they will eventually learn that at some point that's going to need to pause and then go up the next level.
Yeah, when you say going up the next level, it makes me think of physio. So I, again, chronic health, chronic illness girly. I've had many of physio in my time. And yes, I do have a favorite one, very similar to coaching and therapy. But he always says to me, he's like, well, there's no point you just coming back next week until you've done all the exercises I've told you to do. You've got to a point where you're doing them and then they're now easy. He's like, I don't want to waste your money. He's like, do those for a few weeks, get good at those, get comfortable, make sure you're not in pain, all of those things, and then come back. So I
Mm.
feel like that's very similar to what you're saying with, you haven't seen your therapist for a while, but you were working on it. You were working on the things that they've said to you, and now you're like, okay, I've smashed those, or you're at a point where you can't progress with those. You're ready to level up, and I'm wondering how I could easily see that in a physio context, but when I'm talking about my mental well-being, I've never really managed to see that it's the same thing. So
Yeah, I hear that.
I've never pieced that together until just now, hearing you talking about going to the boss level with your therapist. Um,
That's a really interesting observation. I feel like it's yeah, that is a really interesting observation, especially because I'm someone who works with tangibles. I'm like, what's the KPI? Give me the ROI and figures and facts and statistics.
yeah.
What's the measurable thing here? But I think it's more of it's definitely a personal choice, all that cliche, which you'll just know when it's right because okay, the way full transparent half transparency. The way I see my healing process in the 2 years that it's been effective is as if I'm revisiting stages of my life. So when I first started this round, like the let's call it the effective round of therapy, when I started that, that was very much about inner child, going right the way back to my childhood and talking about those things that happened and experiences and unpacking some of that. And not just unpacking, unlearning, deconditioning, reconditioning, relearning, and so on. And that I'm going to say is a lifelong process. You don't ever, that's why I went from mastering, I said mastering it first, then I went acing it, and then I went, nah, I've completed it because I'm at aware of awareness. That's it. I'm at a
Yeah.
place of awareness that I can recognize when certain things are being triggering, or when, for example, you know what, I've made this big conversation with you, but I just know that tomorrow I'm going to have a calm down. That's me recognizing my inner child has, been a little bit triggered here and they're going to need some time to feel held. That holding myself is a challenge and will continue to be a challenge. But then other experiences are now starting to tell me again, full alignment and signs from the universe, if you like, are now starting to talk to me about my inner teen and say, right now, let's talk about this phase of your life now, because there were experiences here that weren't so great. There are experiences here that were absolutely fabulous. Let's talk about how that's shaping your adult life and your adult relationships and your career. How many of those need to be reconditioned and relearned and so on. Fully went on a tangent there and I forgot the original point of this part.
Don't look at me. I think it was about um, we talked about leveling up. We talked about the fact that you have a client that perhaps they're just seeking comfort. Talked. I was talking about my physio and how you have to get good at one
That was
exercise.
it. You were
Yeah,
saying about how do you do that with mental well-being?
yeah,
And I suppose in answer to that question, how do you know when you're ready to level up with regards to your mental well-being
yes.
is simple as keep persevering. I think for me anyway, keep persevering, but also know when to take a break. For example, if I'd have carried on with my therapist, I've not seen her in about a year, I think. Yeah, the last time I saw her might have been January. If I had carried on, I I would have just been paying money for perhaps comfort or the homework that I should be doing myself
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
cracking on with it. And only now have I kind of hit a bit of a stalemate, a bit of a plateau, or new challenges are coming up, new
Mhm.
ideas and new theories are coming up, which I don't necessarily have answers for straight away. Will I now book a session and say, hello, can you be a mirror to me again? Again, I'd like to lead, as always, and that's what she would expect from me. But let's see what gems you might have for me here.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that. And I think when you were talking about one of the three strengths that we started talking about, cannot tell you which one, maybe it was perseverance. I think you made reference to it being like a muscle. Sometimes it's exhausted, sometimes it's strong. And I
Yeah.
know that you're, I think, doing a PT qualification.
Yeah, I'm a gym laddie as well.
Yeah, so
I'm
you're a little,
I'm an
you're
ADHD, does
a
everything that's
yeah,
shiny.
yeah, and also part of my like I guess outlet was weightlifting. Still is, but I've been a bit sick. Again, she's sick. We won't go into it. Haven't been
She's
to the
a
gym in a
chronic
while.
health girly, okay?
I am
Leave
a
her
chronic
alone.
girly. Yeah, so I feel like this is something that we can both relate to having background in gym or enjoying the gym. Is that progressive overload. I feel like it's one of those things that you do, you just keep on doing it, you just keep on adding a little bit more and you get a little bit stronger and then you plateau at that level and you keep going. I feel like again, it's very much like the physio. I'm very much not ready to move on until I can come to you and say, no, Afsa, I did the thing. I did it, and this is what happened, and I kept doing it, or whatever it may be. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, now what? now what do I do? But then also I don't feel like I lead sessions very well. I feel like I just need to be told. I can come to you with a topic and I'll be like, you have to ask me questions.
Well, this is the other thing as well. Sometimes people don't know how to turn up to sessions, and that's
Yeah.
totally okay. So, like, we've got a little negotiation between us, if you like, where we use WhatsApp for booking the sessions. You also obviously follow the Instagram page on Muses Healing, and sometimes you like to share a good meme about ADHD because you know what, I really do think there should be studies done in the healing power of memes and humor because they make a person feel seen, and they what do I always bang on about? We heal in community, right? And
Of
when you were
course.
saying about how the thing that makes us work well is because of how relatable I am, you realize that you're not the only chaotic one. I also have chaos and so on. What is that about? That's about community and recognizing, oh, I'm not so alone in this. Um,
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a tangent. So yeah, we've got that negotiation, and then we've obviously got our actual sessions. And I always say to you, well, between the sessions, maybe just word vomit, whatever it is. And you do. You've got a whiteboard with lists on. You have,
He
a
does.
notebook. You write things down. You pop it in the WhatsApp chat and be like, for next time. And then you
Yeah.
pin it so you remember those things. And then it's up to, I guess, the coach to ask you the questions as to right, which is the most pressing, which one's the one that you think is going to be a logical start for today. So you don't realize that you're leading it, but you do. It just doesn't feel very structured because it feels very much like word vomited. All we're doing is just saying, right, okay, which one, left or right? Which path do you want to do now, left or right? Which one, red pill, blue pill kind of thing. And then, but you're the one that's
Yeah.
making the choices.
And I think also, I remember, must have been a couple of months ago now, I wrote down, as you said, I've got a whiteboard and lots of different coloured pens because that brings me joy. I think I wrote a massive list of like 12 or 13 different questions. And they
Mhm.
weren't just like, what should I have for dinner today? They were like deep, probing life
Yeah.
questions.
Why am I carrying intergenerational trauma and
Yeah.
being expected to break that cycle?
Why is it on me? And so I remember I came to you with, I sent you a picture and I was like, Afsar, oh, put some time in. When are you free? And I think as well, like, I had these questions, but then I presented them to you and you were able to group them. You were able to say, well, these ones I believe relate to childhood, these ones relate to professional life, these ones, whatever it was. And I think I was able to just word vomit and then you made it make sense. Or you at least put it into categories where we could have a meaningful conversation about those questions and that, root cause of whatever it may be. And I think that was really useful for me as well. And thinking about the relationships I've had with past therapists and counselors, like having this sounds really bad. And again, we have an agreement with how we communicate. Having access to them outside of the sessions because of the way my chaos brain works is really useful. So being able to say to you, like having the ability to just WhatsApp you and be like, this is a thing I'm thinking about. Let's save it. Like let's
Mm,
save it. Let's book in and save it. Whereas before it'd be like, well, I would just have this list, or I'd put a note in my phone and I'd see them once every 2 weeks for an hour, and I'd be like, "Oh, excuse me, this is my list," and that would be that. Whereas being able to say, "Oh, this is what I'm thinking. Can we save it?" or "Do you have a link for a resource on this?" or whatever it may be, that helps me because I don't work in a, again, neurodivergent brain. I don't work in a 1 hour session every 2 weeks sort of situation. And
mm,
also on the memes, again, it's that thing of feeling seen and being relatable and knowing that you're not alone in what you're experiencing, which I think actually really brings me down a level. So if I'm feeling super emotional about a specific thing or feeling super chaotic or whatever it may be, there's like that transparency of it's okay. It's not you. It's not just you. Everyone, or not even everyone, like a significant proportion of the population is also experiencing this. You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing, you're not at fault. It's just how your brain operates. And right now it's not operating the way you need it to. But look, here's a SpongeBob meme that says it way better than I'm saying it right now. And I think also the fact that I see those and I think of you and I'm like, Afsar gets it. I think that's also great because again, it's that relatability when we have these conversations. I mean, just organizing this session and the start time of this session with
no one
pure.
needs to know.
No one needs to know the journey we went through to just get online and have this. But I didn't feel guilt. Like I didn't feel guilty to be like, I'm still in bed. I didn't feel bad about it. I knew that you'd understand. I knew that you weren't going to be mad at me. I knew that we were going to be okay. And I think that really helps. That makes me feel better and it makes me feel it's easier to come to sessions and just be honest, knowing that we're on the same page.
And I guess that's what true non-judgment looks like in that am I able to relate to this person and see them as a human and not as a, I mean, the white coat syndrome is a real thing in healthcare, that this person is so far removed and that they are a person of authority and a person of a high standing, and I have to have a lot of respect for them and listen to everything that they say. And that power dynamic is essentially what therapy and coaching is not based on. It should be a level playing field, and maybe there's something for our industry to learn about being more relatable to the clients that we want to work with. And I'm not every client is not like yourself. I work with a lot of different ages and a lot of different uh, genders, neurodiversity, sexualities, all of these intersectionalities play a huge part in how I turn up to that session as well. What I'm hearing is that a person, I mean, and again, with regards to how we use our different forms of social media. Like when Jaeh, for example, is messaging, these are the things that I want to go through in the next session. There's also clarity in that. And I don't want any coach or therapist to feel scared that, wait, I have to be available all the time. No, not at all. You just outline what your boundaries are. So, Jaeh, yes,
Yeah.
it's open for you to message me your list because while they're fresh in your mind, I understand as a neurospicy person that once it's forgotten, it's forgotten. You're never going to come back to it. And that will make the next session just awkward. Are you going to make
Yeah.
the progress that you want? But at the same time, when you messaged it, just don't expect a response back, or don't expect a conversation to come out of it, or don't expect it
Yeah.
to be during these hours and so on. And I think there's that understanding and agreement between us about how we use those, because then when it comes to the sessions, then it's like really fruitful. We get straight into it. We have a little catch up. We talk about, we've got a reference point to bounce off of as well.
Yeah, and I think that is quite key as well, because I think I had spent ages not contacting you because I was like, I don't want him to think that I'm texting him trying to get free coaching. I'm like, if I do it through WhatsApp, I don't have to pay for it. But that was something that was making me super anxious. And when we specifically said, let's talk about how we communicate, um, that helped me so much. It made me feel so much less worried about talking to you because I knew that I could say, these are the things that are on my mind, but I don't want you to answer them now. This isn't a now question. This is me just bit of word vomit. Let's save it. As you said, let's pin it. And I also knew that you knew that I knew that. So that, we'd outlined those boundaries and you had said, I'm not going to, I'll reply. We can put in a session, but like, I'm not going to give you all the answers that way. And we said, because as pre-discussed, she loves a meme. And so I felt like I was spamming you so much. And you were like, no, 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 you send them, but let's save Instagram for the memes. Let's chat about, booking sessions and meeting times and things like that in the WhatsApp, but also feel free to make your list or whatever it may be, and we'll park it. But keep it as a note space, a shared note space. And then we also are in the same book club, so we'd said book club stuff in the other chat, which is absolutely fine. And having that outlined, again, being a very ADHD, anxious, sad girly, someone just saying, these are my boundaries, do you agree? Yes, 100%. Thank you for outlining them. Thank you for making it clear. And then it becomes a space that I know the rules. I like the rules. I like boundaries. I can follow it. So yeah, 100%. I don't expect you or other therapists or coaches to be available 24/7.
Mm,
And I would never sort of like call you in the middle of an afternoon and be like, I'm having a meltdown. Like that's, I appreciate that is not how it works, but I do really value that we do have almost a code of conduct or like a communications plan. And it helps me, as I said, know the rules, follow them, and not overstep boundaries. So
mm.
just spelling it out has made it so helpful for me.
And spot on with as I always say, clarity is kindness, people. So that, yeah, I suppose the overarching lesson here is shop around, find the right therapist, persevere to find the right therapist and coach for yourself, which will help eventually with self-regulation and maybe bringing back some of that zest into life. And when you are doing your shopping around, you don't have to sacrifice the vibe as such that Jaeh was talking about at the beginning, vibe with your therapist, but you also don't have to sacrifice safety. Please ensure, and there's a real difference here, Jaeh and I, but we both love a meme. We love a bit of pop psychology and learning from that. But actually, in fact, why don't you answer this one, Jaeh? I'm conscious of time as well, but we will come to, there I was confidently finishing at 12, but it's almost like you didn't say to me, it's a bit ambitious of you, Afsar.
It's almost like I said.
Not me
You
with the time blindness now. Um, well, why don't you tell us about how, okay, you've got access to, and your ADHD strength is research. It's part of your professional life as well. You will go down and do it, very, very smugly. Yes, that's a bit of me.
It's a
Why,
problem I have.
why are you choosing to pay for therapy and coaching and not therapize and coach yourself using popular psychology from social media? You've got enough of the knowledge.
Okay, so the analyst part of my brain says that we can't trust the methodology or the sourcing of the memes. And this is going to, I could write a dissertation on this. Whilst I enjoy them and they're funny and they're relatable, I can't guarantee where they've come from. I don't know that person's story. Yeah, I can, it might be hilarious ADHD related meme or whatever it may be. And then I going to turn this one around. She's going in there. I stand by what I just said. I'm gonna throw that out there as a disclaimer. I don't think anybody should be therapizing themselves, particularly based off content they see on social media. I feel like that's a deep dark hole where you will find trouble. But at the same time, the only reason I ever went for an ADHD assessment was because I kept seeing reels, TikToks, memes about people that had ADHD, and I was like, oh, I think that's a bit too relatable. that feels like what I've got. I relate to that a lot. And so it was actually that pop media sort of side of things that pushed me into seeking that diagnosis. Well, I can't say seeking diagnosis. I did get a diagnosis, but finding out more, trying to understand, um, is this something, it's not something that's wrong with me, not at all. I just want to understand how I operate because, again, as you said, I'm highly analytical. Um, I need to understand how I work and how I can make that work at first out in a professional setting, but also I've learned along the way my personal life. She's a little messy. So understanding how I think and things like that is super helpful because then I can talk to my husband and be like, yes, I know I'm being irrational. No, I know it makes no sense, but I need you to know that I know that. And I need you to, whatever it may be, just like give a bit of patience, a bit of understanding that no, I'm not actually having a meltdown. I'm just having a moment. But the reason I did actually seek help or professional um, guidance on these things is because I have this tendency of just talking myself into circles and then convincing myself that my problems aren't problems, or even if they're not problems, perhaps I convince myself that they're not something that are worth discussing, or it's
Mhm.
not something that needs to be anybody else's problem. But then having both therapy and coaching, or a fun mixture of both, has taught me that whilst I might not feel that they're problems I should burden someone else with, they are things that I need to talk about if I want to be sometimes just functional as a person. If there's things in my past that, I know you and I have spoken a lot about trauma. At first, I was like, no, I don't have that. I wasn't in an accident. I didn't go to war. But understanding that there's more to it than that, and also having someone that is qualified, about all the books and the theories and the things. So when I'm just sat here like, no, I didn't do war, then you can say, well, it's not just that. Have you considered reading this? It can tell you all these things. So yeah, whilst the social media, again, don't use it to diagnose yourself or as serious advice, that feels like a bad thing to do. Whilst it did push me in the direction of seeking professional um,
Mhm.
help, it was that tool that pushed me to understand that yes, other people feel like this is a valid feeling, this is something that you don't have to live with, or there is an opportunity for you to talk about these things. I have forgotten the original question, so
No,
I'm gonna
you've
stop
answered
there.
it.
Okay, great.
You've
I
answered it, which
just
is that like
rambled.
pop psychology. So yeah, no, the question was why do you still pay for therapy if not when you could just use pop psychology? But what I'm hearing you say is that popular psychology and social media is there as a springboard, it's a starter. Use it to find out more about the world and yourself, but for the deep inner work, you'll need someone who's qualified and someone who can hold a mirror up to you in your personal context and not a generalized meme.
That was a great summary of my ramblings. Like
A
I
little
rambled so much I couldn't work out where I'd gone.
a little teaser there, guys, of what happens in our sessions. Ramble, ramble, ramble 80%, 20% tidies it up a little bit, and then just tap like
Yeah, and
detangles
then we
that.
move on.
Yeah. And then we go on to the next one and repeat the cycle all over again.
Yay.
Amazing. What I'm going to suggest is, if you're up for it, should we do a little cheeky part two where we take a break now? We reconvene after, well, I'm going to do the survey again, and I'll invite you to do the same if you want to, because we love to see a little bit of a progress change, and maybe a shorter part two where we can talk about the changes in that survey as well as potential vision boarding. What are your thoughts?
That sounds so dreamy, and I would love to.
I had a feeling you'd say that. So I'm going to pause the recording there and say goodbye to the listeners for part one. We'll be back in part two after we've done the survey. And if those of you who have been listening since episode one, all the way in January, and you've done the survey back then as well, this is probably a great time for you to redo your survey because it's been a whole 12 months on. See if there's been any changes and book in a session with me to discuss that, or just reflect it yourself, of course, and find out what is it that's changed and why. So on the other side, peace out.